The house at the end of Crescent Road. A calm horror story. Nobody remembered when the house was built. It wasn't on any map, and it didn't show up in satellite images. But somehow, it was always there, at the very end of Crescent Road, where the pavement cracked and the streetlights stopped working. People said it was just an old foundation. A relic from the past. But that changed the night Marla moved in. She wasn't looking for much, just something cheap, quiet, and far from the city. The listing said, 2-bed, 1-bath, private land, fixer-upper. The price was too good to be true. She signed the papers in a gas station parking lot. The agent didn't shake her hand. Just handed her the keys and drove off. She should have turned around then. But she didn't. The house looked wrong from the start. It didn't face the road, it faced the woods. And there were no windows on the back, just a solid wall of old wood, warped and knotted like it had grown that way. Inside, everything was covered in sheets, though the listing claimed it had been empty for decades. The kitchen light buzzed when she flicked it on. The fridge was unplugged, but still cold. And in the living room, she found an old rotary phone sitting on a small table. The cord was cut. That night, she heard footsteps in the attic. Marla told herself it was just an animal. A raccoon, maybe. She didn't sleep. Just watched the shadows from the forest stretch long across the floor as the moon passed overhead. At 2:17 a.m., the rotary phone rang. It shouldn't have been able to. She stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. It rang again. She picked it up. "Hello?" she whispered. A low static hissed back. Then a voice, far away, like through water. "Why did you come back?" Marla hung up. And the line rang again. She didn't answer that time. Just sat there until the ringing stopped. The next morning, she found muddy footprints in the hallway. Small. Barefoot. Leading from the attic door to the kitchen and back. There was dust everywhere else, no sign anyone had walked through the house in years. Except those prints. She opened the attic. Nothing but boxes. Old toys. A crib. And in the corner, a rocking chair still swaying slightly. Marla closed the door and nailed it shut. Days passed. The phone rang every night at 2:17. Never earlier. Never later. She stopped answering. Until one night, the voice said something different. "Let me in." Marla left the house the next morning and drove to town. She asked around, old shopkeepers, gas station attendants, even the town clerk. No one remembered selling that property. The records office showed no listings on Crescent Road past house number 142. Her address was 143. When she returned, the mail was waiting. Just one envelope. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a black and white photo. Faded. Torn. It showed the house. The same one she was living in, but older. And standing on the porch was a woman who looked exactly like her. That night, the attic door was open again. Marla began sleeping in her car. Then in a motel 40 minutes away. But every time she came back, the house looked worse. More weathered. More cracked. Like it was aging fast. Or like time was catching up to it all at once. Inside, furniture shifted positions. The rotary phone now sat in the kitchen. Once, she found it under her pillow. And one morning, she heard humming from the basement. There was no basement on the blueprints. She called a contractor. He refused to come out that far. Said the road didn't exist on his GPS. Crescent Road, he repeated. Is that still there? That night, the humming grew louder. It wasn't a song. Just a single, vibrating note. Low and deep. Like something very large was trying to breathe beneath the house. Marla opened the trapdoor in the pantry floor. It hadn't been there before. The steps led down, spiraling. Earth walls lined with old boards. Her flashlight flickered the deeper she went. At the bottom, a room. Stone walls. A bed. A table. And dozens of photos on the walls, all of her. Sleeping. Cooking. Sitting in her car. Staring out the window. Photos taken from inside the house. And one last photo in the center of the room. It was labeled, "Welcome Home." The humming stopped. Behind her, the door creaked shut. They found the house abandoned again. Neighbors, the few who remembered it, said it had been empty for decades. The deed was blank. No record of a sale. But every now and then, late at night, people swore they heard a phone ringing from the woods. And if you stood at the edge of Crescent Road, past the last working streetlight, you might see a woman standing in the attic window, still waiting for someone to answer the call. The end. Marla didn't scream. She pressed her back against the wall of the basement room, flashlight trembling in her grip. The air was thick and stale, smelling of damp earth and old wood. Behind her, the spiral stairs remained. Narrow. Steep. Shadowed. She took the photo marked, "Welcome Home," and turned it over. Nothing on the back. Then her flashlight flickered. She tapped it. Once. Twice. And then it died. In total darkness, the humming returned. But now, it wasn't just a sound. It was a presence, a vibration in her chest, like a drumbeat coming from underground. She reached for her phone. No signal. She turned toward the stairs, but where there had once been a spiral, there was now just a wall. The entrance had vanished. Or moved. She wasn't sure how long she wandered in the dark. Minutes. Hours. Time was melting. Then she found a door. It hadn't been there before. Heavy wood with iron hinges, sunken into stone. She pushed it open. Beyond it, another room. Furnished like a nursery. A crib. A rocking horse. Shelves lined with antique toys. And on the wall, written in chalk. Asterisk asterisk. It started with the child, asterisk asterisk. Marla turned, and the room behind her was gone. Only the nursery remained. She stepped to the crib, hesitant, and peered inside. A stuffed bear. One eye missing. Its fur matted with something dark. She picked it up. A small tag dangled from its neck, asterisk asterisk 4M, 1986 asterisk asterisk. That was the year she was born. The humming shifted. Now it sounded like voices overlapping. Thousands of voices, whispering too fast to understand. She dropped the bear and ran. Corridors branched endlessly. Each led to another room, a memory, a moment, a place she didn't remember but somehow knew. One room held her childhood bedroom. Another had her grandmother's kitchen. One was a hospital hallway with flickering lights and a nameplate on the door, Marla Ray, Observation Wing. The last room she entered was a replica of her current kitchen. But the phone was off the hook, dangling. Still ringing. She answered it. A child's voice. Asterisk asterisk. We're all still here. But you locked the door. When she awoke, she was back in the living room. Daylight. No signs of the basement or the spiral staircase. No trapdoor in the pantry. The phone sat quietly on the table. No dust. No sheets on furniture. Everything clean. Too clean. Like no one had ever lived there. That night, the doorbell rang. There was no doorbell on the house. She opened the front door slowly, heart in her throat. A small girl stood on the porch. Barefoot. Dirty. Holding the stuffed bear. She looked up at Marla and whispered, "You forgot me." Then turned and walked into the woods. The next few days unraveled quickly. Clocks ran backward. Reflections moved before she did. She heard her own voice calling her name from the forest at night. She tried leaving. Packed her car. Drove straight until she hit town. But the town was wrong. The people were still. Silent. Eyes too dark. When she asked for directions, they only pointed toward the woods. And when she looked in the mirror of the gas station bathroom, it wasn't her reflection that stared back. Back at the house, she found pages nailed to the walls. Journal entries. Some in her handwriting. Others unfamiliar. The house is a mouth. Every step echoes like a swallow. She comes at 2:17. Every time. The girl. The voice. Myself. I thought I was buying quiet. I bought a memory that never died. It started with the child. But it ends with the door. She walked through the house one last time. There were now 7 bedrooms. She couldn't find the original kitchen. She heard breathing behind the walls. One door appeared where none had been, red, carved with spirals. On the handle, her name. She turned it. Inside, the house was burning. And in the middle of the fire, a woman, her again, smiled. "Welcome home," she said. Marla stepped forward into the heat. The door closed. Weeks later, hikers found a foundation at the end of Crescent Road. No house. Just ashes. But one room was untouched. Stone walls. A rotary phone. And on the floor, a stuffed bear. The tag read, "Still here. Open book, the end." The fire didn't consume her. Instead, it held her, suspended, weightless in orange and gold. It whispered names she didn't recognize. Names from her dreams. Names she'd scribbled in notebooks as a child. She tried to scream, but her voice was outside the house now, echoing along the walls. The flames folded inward, reshaping. Suddenly, she stood in a long hallway lined with mirrors. Each mirror showed her, but different. Older. Younger. Wearing clothes she never owned. Eyes too dark. Mouths moving with no sound. One mirror was cracked, and her reflection stepped out. "You lasted longer than most," it said. Marla ran. The house folded behind her like paper. Walls curled. Floors lifted. Windows blinked like eyes. She sprinted down a staircase that had never existed, miles of red velvet steps descending into black. And at the bottom, a door. Simple. White. Ordinary. She opened it. And walked into her childhood home. The smell of cookies. Her favorite cartoon on the TV. Mom in the kitchen. "Hi, sweetheart," her mother said, smiling. "Rough day?" Marla trembled. "You're not real." "Of course I am. Sit down. Let me take care of you." Her mom turned. The back of her head was gone. Just an empty hole, like a puppet mask. Marla screamed and bolted through the hallway. The wallpaper peeled in waves, revealing eyes underneath. Watching. Blinking. Every door she opened led to another house. Another version. She saw herself, again and again, in different lives. One where she never left the city. One where she died at birth. One where she never existed at all. Finally, she entered a blank room. No ceiling. No floor. Just gray fog. And a single chair. On it, the rotary phone. It rang. 2:17 a.m. She answered. The voice whispered. Now you understand. The house isn't haunted. It's hungry. Click. Marla never left. The house swallowed her name, her past, her body. But if you walk to the end of Crescent Road, you'll see the lights on. The windows watching. And every night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the phone rings. Waiting for the next voice to answer. Videocassette the end. Years later, a developer tried to build on the Crescent Road lot. They cleared the land. Dug up the foundation. But every morning, the dirt was back in place, undisturbed, like it had never been touched. One worker left in the night. His tent abandoned. On the pillow, a rotary phone. Still ringing. He was never seen again. Now, locals don't go near the end of the road. And if you stand just past the tree line, you might hear the faint hum of a voice calling. Why did you come back? Open book the end. Epilogue. 2 weeks later, a hiker spotted smoke rising from Crescent Road. When authorities investigated, they found the house half-burned, roof caved in, walls scorched black. But there was no sign of fire damage to the trees around it. Inside the ruins, beneath collapsed beams, they discovered something untouched. An old rotary phone. The line was dead. The cord still cut. But at exactly 2:17 a.m. each night, it rang. The first responder who picked it up said he heard breathing. And a voice whisper. Why did you leave me? They never returned to the site. The road has since been fenced off. Overgrown. Forgotten again. But if you stand by the rusted gate at the end of Crescent Road, and if the moon is high and the wind is still, you might hear it. The soft, distant ring of a phone in a place that shouldn't exist. Waiting for someone to answer.